Welcome to the third theme. Today we'll be talking about all things regulation. Here's all the content we will be discussing in further detail today. What is sensory dysregulation? What is happening in the brain during dysregulation? What dysregulation may look like? How to support your child when they are dysregulated? What is co-regulation and why is it important? And basic emotion recognition. What is sensory dysregulation? How does sensory integration work? Sensations are food or nourishment for the nervous system. Every muscle, joint, vital organ, bit of skin, and sense organ in the head sends sensory inputs to the brain. Every sensation is a form of information. The nervous system uses this information to produce response that adapt the body and mind to that information. But before our body can make an adaptive response, we must organize the sensations from our body and from our environment. We can adapt to a situation only if our brain knows what the situation is. When a child acts in an adaptive manner, we know that their brain is organizing sensations efficiently. A well-organized adaptive response leaves the brain in a more organized state. To integrate sensations, a child will try to adapt to those sensations. A child on a swing will move his body in response to the sensations of gravity and movement, and his movements will help his brain to organize those sensations. Nobody can make an adaptive response for a child. They must do it themselves. The formation of adaptive response helps the brain to develop and organize itself. Most adults see this as merely play. However, play consists of a series of adaptive responses that make sensory integration happen. But without well-organized sensory processes, sensations cannot be digested and nourish the brain. What is sensory dysregulation? Sensory dysregulation is when the brain is not processing or organizing the flow of sensory impulses in a manner that gives the individual good, precise information about their self or their world. When the brain is not processing sensory input well, it usually is not directing behavior effectively either. Let us illustrate this information with an analogy. Imagine a small business with a staff of 4 and a similar business with a staff of 8. All things being said, we think they may be equal. We would expect the 8-person business to do more work. Let's suppose that one day, however, 4 of the people on the 8-person staff were absent, while all of the 4-person staff were on the job. Although both businesses would have 4 people on duty, the 4 full-person staff would probably do better than the 8 half-person staff. Likewise, in order to organize senses, a brain must have all of the sensory neurons working together. However, sensory processing concerns are not an absence of function in the brain. They are a malfunction and can be worked through. An 8-person staff of workers who do not talk to each other cannot do as well as a 4-person staff that communicates freely. The child with sensory processing concerns has a full staff of neurons, but these neurons are not talking to each other at certain times. What is happening in the brain? What is happening in your child's brain during dysregulation? The brain must organize all of the sensations we feel if a person is to move and learn and behave in a productive manner. The brain locates, sorts, and orders sensations, somewhat as a traffic officer directs moving cars. When sensations flow in an organized manner, the brain can use those sensations to form perceptions, behaviors, and learning. When the flow of sensation is disorganized, life can be like a rush hour traffic jam. Some bits of sensory information get towed up in traffic, and certain parts of the brain do not get the sensory information they need to do their jobs. There is an example of how, without clear messages from the hands and eyes, a child cannot color between the lines, put a puzzle together, cut accurately with scissors, or paste 2 pieces of paper together neatly. Austin is an example of how some children cannot organize the sensations from their skin. They may get angry or anxious when people touch them or even stand away from others. Emily is another example of how some children cannot organize the sensations from their skin. Emily is standing in line and someone accidentally bumps into her. She may become angry or strike back. The anger and hitting have nothing to do with interpersonal relationships. They are automatic reactions to sensations that Emily cannot tolerate. Some additional examples of what is happening when the brain is struggling to organize the flow of sensations. Sometimes lights or noises will irritate and distract a child. If you were to watch closely, you may notice the irritation in a child's face. Without good sensory integration, it is hard to learn how to tie a shoe, hold a pair of scissors, not break the lead of a pencil when writing, change from one task to another, and recognize stop signs on the way to school. Some children may have to remember instructions to do 2 things at once, such as put away your books and then get your pencil, when it is hard to remember even a single instruction. Another example pertaining to school is in the classroom. A child may be easily distracted by all the extraneous sounds, lights, and confusion, of many people doing different things. The brain is overstimulated and responds with a lot of excessive activity. The hyperactive child jumps all over the classroom, not because that is what they want to do, but because they are running out of control. What dysregulation could look like. Each of us has our own limits given any situation, but once you're in tune with your body's needs, you know when it has become too much. When the system is unbalanced, maladaptive behaviors such as tantrums can occur. Sensory dysregulation could look like increased meltdowns or tantrums, excessive crying and whining, anger or outbursts, more attached, toileting accidents, unable to control emotions, anxiety or worry, irritability, withdrawal, upset by transitions or unexpected changes, unsociable, excessively cautious and afraid to try new things, wanting control over every situation, not waiting for their turn or interrupts constantly, prone to create situations others perceive as bad or dangerous or disruptive, and often may be discharged from schools if their behaviors are intense enough. Behaviors that you might see are usually a clue as to what is going on in their nervous system. How to support your child when they are dysregulated. On this slide are some of the various examples you could try at home. However, discussing with your therapist is a great remedy for additional activities or strategies your therapist has noticed to help regulate your child when they are showing signs of distress. The goal is to work through using a trial and error method for different regulation strategies, which is a great way to discover what works for your child during different circumstances. This is called a sensory diet and should be tailored to your child's needs. Things you can try and notice during the moment when your child is showing signs of distress are identifying the triggers, notice and identify the emotion, model emotional regulation skills to help them and respond in a calm, supportive manner. Understanding your child's sensory experience helps you to make sense of their behavior. Remember, every person has a nervous system, and each nervous system works a little differently. Before making assumptions about emotions and behaviors, it is helpful to get information about what sensory experiences may or may not be contributing to your child's emotions and behaviors. Try to take a moment to think about your child and jot down your thoughts. What are some sensory triggers that your child reacts to? What sensory experiences are soothing to your child? Do certain environments make reactions better or worse? Do certain times of day change your child's responses? In the moment, here are some common strategies you can utilize. However, once again, these are dependent on your child and what works to regulate them. You may have to try trial and error to discover what works. Unfortunately, there are not certain strategies that work for all children. You can try to use a low tone of voice, provide them with space if needed, try and clean up any clutter, use few words or use visuals instead of words, offer them a hug, turning the lights off, offer to have them put on clothing that provides compression, trying a balance board, doing some gentle rhythmic swinging or linear rocking, or you can go for a walk outside and talk about what they see, hear, and smell. Remember, vestibular is the driving force for helping a child to regulate, so this may be a strategy you can try. Oftentimes, when trying strategies, it is best to try and use them various times before ruling them out as not working. A strategy cannot be determined to not work if only practiced a few times. Self-regulation encompasses so much, including having an efficient nervous system. It is also a skill that children learn from observing others, being taught, and practice. The trick is to not avoid hard situations. Instead, you can work on coaching your child through tough situations. Breaking an activity into smaller, more doable parts can help. For instance, if your child has a hard time brushing their teeth, start with just putting toothpaste on the toothbrush. Praise them a lot when they do it, and slowly add steps. Strategies you can incorporate throughout the day to help with regulation of the nervous system. Sensory integration activities can prompt the brain to process sensory information more effectively, helping an individual to respond more appropriately to their environment. If this is added in more throughout their day, it can help them self-regulate on their own. When their child is regulated, they are able to engage with you and learn. When a child is dysregulated, they cannot learn. So working towards helping them to recognize when they need a sensory break or when they may need more input can help them to self-regulate on their own and continue to engage with you and learn. Activities you can incorporate throughout your child's day are hugging, walking, chewing gum, having a hot drink, eating snacks and crunchy foods, swinging, climbing, hanging on things, playing with water, being barefoot outside, sensory play, and multisensory play. Next, we will be discussing the use of a secret. At home or outside of therapy, you can also try to incorporate the model. This concept of a secret is a process of problem-solving situations that work to support your child at times when he or she is experiencing sensory challenges or showing signs of distress. If in the moment you can remember the strategy, you can use each letter of the acronym to guide your child out of his downslide and yourself from panicking. A stands for attention, S, sensation, E, emotional regulation, C, culture, context, or current conditions, R, relationships, E, environment, and T, tasks. When utilizing this, you start with step 1 under the challenged area. Select one challenge you wish to focus on and write it down. Step 2, use the elements of A3 to help you strategize ways you might help your child move forward in the challenged area. When discussing attention, things you can think about are questions such as the problem being the lack of attention. What can I think of that might make the task more interesting to my child or to help them focus? For sensation, questions to consider could be, how can some type of sensory input help your child succeed at the task? Plus, you remember that input to their muscles and joints, heavy work, is calming. Some exercises that could be completed could be jumping on a trampoline, doing some heavy work, helping moving heavy boxes or bins, and bringing in groceries. Another example could be using weighted pressure to calm your child down during the task. Emotional regulation, you could prepare your child for a task emotionally by listening to positive, uplifting music before a task or before going somewhere. For culture, context, or current conditions, questions to consider could be, how can you figure out a way to change the culture, context, or current conditions of the task so that your child has a more positive experience? When discussing culture, it is a way things are usually done regarding customs, contexts, habits, or conditions that create a way of life. For example, having a snack before a task or before a sport game. Another, for example, could be if your child is nervous about all the people, sounds, smell, and unexpected sensations that come at the movies. Theaters are dark and may be scary for a child with overresponsivity. Maybe you could give your child a small flashlight that they could hold for security. Also, practice deep breathing exercises with them in advance on the way and letting your child know you guys can do them during the movies also. For relationships, one important aspect of keeping children calm and focused is called co-regulation, which is being able to lend your child your own state of regulation. Think of it like this. Let's say you're on your way to your child's sports game or recital for school and are stressing out over how it will go. Chances are your child will pick up on your anxiety and will start stressing out also. Instead, if you use uplifting words, your child will hear and respond to your feelings. For environment, some questions you can consider for the environment are, is there anything about the task that's distracting your child? Or is there something you could do to tweak their experience or their surroundings to make the task more comfortable? For example, let's say your child is sensitive to light and is playing in the afternoon sun. Maybe sunglasses would help, or maybe having the activity move to more of a shaded area. If your child has an auditory processing concern, maybe he's unable to hear someone clearly. Try encouraging your child to ask the person to speak louder. Children with sensory overresponsivity benefit from time in as opposed to time out places. Time in refers to a place that a child can choose to go to self-regulate when they are feeling stressed or anticipating a mealtime. Time and spaces can occur in a crawl-in space under the stairs, in a tent, in a closet, or even a small corner by placing their hood over their head. When a child is in their designated place, no one else is allowed in. Time in provides a time and place that under the child's control to enable them to self-regulate when necessary. This is beneficial for all children, not just those with sensory overresponsivity. For task, finally consider the task. Can you work with your child on ways to improve their skills outside of this activity, prepare them for the activity, or practice what the task is, or a checklist of the task? For example, practicing kicking in your backyard might hone in skills if the motor skill your child struggles with is kicking a soccer ball. Or set up a play date and invite an older child over to play soccer with your child. Another example, if going to the movies is hard, you could have a practice movie session at home first. You can also make a chart of pieces of what the experience is likely to entail. There will be worksheets provided just as a supplement that goes through scenarios using a secret. What is co-regulation? Why is it important? And how can I use it effectively? Earlier, we discussed co-regulation. When we mentioned that to help your child regulate, you can model emotional regulation skills. This is a great form of teaching your child self-regulation skills and where your child can learn how to self-soothe. Co-regulation comes before self-regulation developmentally. Before your children can self-regulate, they need the support of adults around them to teach and help them develop the abilities to regulate on their own. They need to co-regulate or coexist with parents, teachers, and others who can show them the ropes, and learn to balance and calm their internal and external systems. Co-regulation is the feelings and behavior of people in close proximity to us, directly impacting how we feel and respond to our emotions. When children become upset, if those around them stay calm, demonstrating how to calm down, the child too can also calm down. However, in order for co-regulation to work, the person working with them also needs to be self-regulated, displaying tools and strategies to support them. If a parent, friend, or caregiver responds to a young child's meltdown or behaviors with emotional outburst, anger, stress, and anxiety, the young child cannot soothe themselves or learn how to properly use their skills to soothe themselves. Why is co-regulation important? Young children do not have access to this. It is still developing and will continue to develop fully until the age of 25. However, the brain develops very rapidly the first 3 to 5 years of life, and all the structure and building blocks are present by the age of 9. Within the first 3 to 5 years, a child's prefrontal cortex, or thinking area, which contains their executive functioning, regulation, logic, and reasoning, is still developing rapidly. Children have trouble self-regulating on their own, which is due to not having full access to that thinking area of their brain. Teach regulation skills by learning from someone who is regulated, and repeated experiences to hardwire those pathways in the brain. Think of it as building a muscle or learning. A way to utilize co-regulation is by practicing using the 5 C's when your child is showing signs of distress. Step 1, being calm. Try to regulate yourself, displaying calmness when approaching your child who may be dysregulated. To prepare, you could take a deep breath or take a minute. Progress to step 2, curious. Think of what may have caused your child signs of distress, such as someone bumping into them, someone yelling loudly, or they are having a motor planning issue as to why they cannot leave the room, or even they are sad because their toy broke. The third step, co-regulation. This is how you use your own body to help them regulate. This can be achieved through your body position, being at their level, the use of low tone of voice, and saying what you see. So you want to try and get down on their level, mirror calmness, and validate how they are feeling, such as, I see you're really frustrated. Things you could talk about during that co-regulation could be the throwing of a toy, such as stating, I see that you threw the toy and I understand you might be upset because you are having fun and it's time to go. Once your child is mirroring your calmness and is connected with you, then try and collaborate to fix whatever is happening. You then progress to step 4, collaboration. This is working with your child to collaborate on how to fix what is upsetting them or frightening them. However, you cannot progress to collaboration until your child is mirroring your calmness. You have to try and work with your child and not direct what should be happening. If there is no collaboration, then it is going to send them back into fight or flight because they were not able to give a say. Things you could say, for example, are, I wonder how we can get out of the door in a safe way. You provide 2 examples and give them the control to choose between the 2. Or if they are sad from their toy breaking, you could suggest to tape the toy together or state things such as, I wonder if there's a second favorite toy, but help them come to the conclusion on their own. If they are fighting you on everything, go up and co-regulate again by just sitting next to them and letting them calm down. Progress to step 5, consistency, or being consistent with the use of these steps. However, if there is a safety concern, you're allowed to set the safety limit, such as an adult, I have to keep you safe. Safety comes first, such as removing a toy. Finally, we'll be discussing basic emotion recognition. Emotions are powerful, and when we struggle to understand and label the feelings that we are experiencing, it can be difficult to manage them effectively. Try not to ask what emotion they are feeling, or for them to tell you what emotion they are experiencing during the moment. This can add to the feeling of distress. Try practicing what emotions we are feeling in a fun, playful manner when they are regulated, such as during a daily ritual, such as bedtime or during playtime. This can help the child to access calming strategies during dysregulation. Emotional regulation strategies. First, teach yourself and your child to recognize emotional states. Try and identify your emotion to your child throughout the day, or even have siblings participate in identifying their emotions. This can be helpful to your children who are less aware of their own emotions. Another approach is to make educated guesses about their state and have them tell you if you are right or wrong. Second, you can practice emotional regulation activities with your child, such as with the spotlight bracelet game. In this activity, use color rubber bracelets to represent emotional states. The bracelets should be green, yellow, and red, like stoplights. Green bracelets represent a green light or positive state such as happiness, confidence, and a sense that everything is okay. Yellow bracelets represent the process of dysregulation, becoming unhappy, frustrated, or upset. Red bracelets represent the feeling of anger, significant irritation, or impatience. The experience of having children wear the colored bracelets throughout the day helps them to associate their feelings with daily experiences. Or you can identify emotions by pointing at pictures or magazines, progressing towards how they are feeling or what color band they might be pertaining to as the emotion in the image. Third, use pretend play to practice emotional regulation strategies. Acting out different scenarios with a child helps them to deal with emotional regulation externally before having to use techniques in real life situations. The acting out feelings game can be played with colored puppets, which children make out of socks to represent emotions. What's next? When a child begins to be able to recognize their emotional state, you can begin to help them to learn to choose appropriate activities that can use prior to having a meltdown. You can present the activities to your child visually or provide a verbal of two, so your child can choose one in effort to self-regulate. Another example, to help your child recognize emotions, or using activity cards for self-regulation, which can be laminated and placed on a key ring for immediate use. These can be used for when we are feeling a big emotion and what we can do during that big emotion. These can be things such as washing hands, deep breathing, palm squeezes, count to 10, drink water, stretch, apply essential oils on the wrist, such as lavender, vanilla, and coconut, which are calming scents, calming corner or timing corner, crunchy snacks, squeeze a ball, or asking for a hug. Or you can use big emotion calming strategies to help children explore what calming activities feel most nourishing to them. These are some suggested strategies. However, try to identify one or two that could be beneficial for your child so they are able to remember and utilize them before becoming dysregulated. For angry or feeling very upset, I can count to 10. I can talk to a friend. I can walk away. I can do something I enjoy. I can take a deep breath, or I can ask them to stop. For confused or unable to understand something, I can ask my teacher for help. I can ask for an explanation or an example. I can take a deep breath. I can look up what I need on my computer. I can look in the book for an explanation. For excited or feeling very happy or full of energy, I can try and stay calm. I can count to 10. I can play my favorite sport. I can do jumping jacks. I can call a friend, or I can sing. For sad or feeling upset or unhappy, I can listen to music. I can write about my feelings. I can distract myself with something I enjoy. I can get a hug, or I can cry. For scared or feeling fear or afraid, I can do something calming. I can write about it. I can talk to an adult. I can turn on a light, or I can hold my favorite toy. For worried or unhappy because you think something bad may happen, I can talk to my parents. I can think of how great I am. I can think that everything will be okay. I can write about it. I can color about it. I can do something I enjoy, and I can ask for help. Two additional emotions, such as bored and frustrated. For bored or feeling unhappy because something is uninteresting or because you have nothing to do, I can read a book. I can play my toys. I can draw a picture. I can call a friend to talk. I can ask my parents to plan a play date, and I can play in my yard. For frustrated or feeling upset because you cannot change or do something, I can talk to an adult. I can think of what went wrong and how I can do better. I can take a break. I can try again, and I can do something I enjoy. Thanks for listening, and here are the resources.